Nobody respected Jessica. 25 years old, newly assigned lieutenant, her father was a general, but she had zero combat experience. They called her "Daddy's girl" behind her back. Until that night when the mortar attack began and Jessica's 6-year secret special operations background emerged minute by minute. Before we begin this powerful story of hidden courage and silent strength, tell me in the comments what city you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this need to be heard, hit that subscribe button and help us make sure these voices are never forgotten. Forward Operating Base Lightning sat in one of Afghanistan's most dangerous regions, squeezed between mountains, just 3 kilometers from enemy lines. The 150 soldiers stationed here lived face to face with death every single day. Lieutenant Jessica Mitchell had been assigned to this base 3 weeks ago. Stanford graduate, military academy honors, but none of it mattered because everyone only knew one thing. Her father was General Richard Mitchell. Every morning when Jessica entered the mess hall, conversations stopped. When she got coffee, soldiers looked away. When she gave orders, they said, "Yes, ma'am," but their voices carried tolerance, not respect. Captain Rodriguez, one of the unit's most experienced officers, had pulled Jessica aside during her first week. "Listen, Lieutenant," he'd said, his voice carrying fatherly concern. "This isn't the academy. This is real. You're here because of your father, but you'll need to earn your soldiers' trust." Jessica had simply nodded. She had so much to say, but couldn't, because what wasn't written in her file were things she sometimes tried to forget herself. The soldiers began testing Jessica. They deliberately turned in reports late. They loosely interpreted her orders. Sergeant Davis, a 15-year veteran Marine, openly challenged her. "Ma'am, this tactical plan isn't realistic," he'd said during a briefing. "Things they teach in the academy don't work in the field." Jessica had looked at the map, pointing to 3 positions with her finger. "Sergeant, these elevations are ideal for sniper positions, but the southeastern approach isn't secure. IED risk is too high." Davis had frowned. How did she know that? But Jessica hadn't explained. She couldn't. The truth was, Lieutenant Jessica Mitchell had 6 years that didn't exist in her official file. Before entering the military academy at 18, she'd been selected for the CIA's youth program, special training, language courses, infiltration techniques. Then for 2 years, she'd worked undercover along the Pakistan-Afghanistan border. She'd entered Taliban commanders' homes, gathering intelligence, located bomb-making workshops, relayed coordinates to headquarters. She'd never pulled a trigger but had embraced death every single day. Then one day, an operation had gone wrong. Cover blown, identity compromised. For her family's safety, she'd been pulled from the program, all records erased. Officially, it had never happened. Even her father, General Mitchell, didn't know. He thought Jessica had started military academy late. By the end of the 3rd week, morale had worsened. Soldiers had started calling Jessica Princess, not to her face, of course, but she heard it. Private Chen, a 19-year-old soldier, had gathered the courage to ask, "Lieutenant, have you ever seen real combat?" Jessica had been quiet for a long time. "No, Chen, I have no combat experience outside the academy." Technically true. It wasn't in the official records. That night, alone in her tent, Jessica had read a letter from her mother, Sarah. "Sweetheart, how are you doing there? You're so much like your father. His first command was difficult too." As Jessica folded the letter, she'd thought, if only it were that simple. October 22nd, 02:30 hours. Jessica woke to the alarm. But this wasn't the normal alarm. It was the base-wide attack alarm. "Incoming! Incoming! All personnel to defensive positions!" When Jessica burst from her tent, the sky was ablaze. Mortar rounds were hitting everywhere around the base. Explosions, screams, panic. Running to the command post, the scene she witnessed was horrifying. The southern perimeter had been breached. 30-40 Taliban fighters had infiltrated. Close-quarters combat had begun. Captain Rodriguez was shouting over the radio, "All officers to command, we need immediate tactical response." When Jessica reached the command post, there was chaos. 2 senior officers were wounded. Rodriguez was looking at the map in his hands, trying to calculate coordinates. "They're coming from 3 directions," Rodriguez said. "We're outnumbered 3-1. Air support is 20 minutes out." Jessica looked at the map. She saw it instantly. The Taliban's approach routes, weak points, strategic positions. Everything she'd learned in secret missions 6 years ago came flooding back. "Sir," Jessica said, "permission to take Bravo team to high ground. I can flank them from the northeast ridge." Rodriguez was surprised. "Lieutenant, this isn't textbook warfare. These are real bullets." "I know, sir." Rodriguez looked into Jessica's eyes. What he saw there surprised him. It wasn't fear, it was experience. "Go," Rodriguez said, "but stick to protocol." Jessica had already forgotten protocol. She gathered Bravo team, Sergeant Davis, Private Chen, Corporal Williams, and 8 others. "Listen up," Jessica said, her voice no longer that of a hesitant young officer, but an experienced operator. "We're going up the ridge line, establish overwatch, provide covering fire for Alpha Team's counterattack." Davis started to object. "Ma'am, that route is exposed. We'll be sitting ducks." Jessica pointed to the map with her finger. "Not if we approach from here. Taliban's night vision is limited from this angle. Trust me." Trust me. Davis had never heard her speak in that tone before. During the advance, Jessica's movement had changed. She was no longer walking like a recent graduate. Silent steps, tactical positioning, environmental awareness. The soldiers began to notice. When they reached the ridge, Jessica scanned the area through binoculars. In 30 seconds, she'd identified enemy positions. "Davis, Williams, you take the left flank. Chen, Murphy, right side overwatch. I'll call coordinates." "Ma'am, how do you know?" "Now!" Command voice. Davis had never heard such a tone. He automatically took position. Jessica keyed the radio. "Command, this is Bravo leader. I have eyes on 15 hostiles. Grid reference 38S MD 23456-12345. The coordinates were perfect. Rodriguez was surprised at the command post. How had she identified them so quickly? When the firefight began, Jessica's true face emerged. Return fire, tactical movement, squad coordination. None of her movements were academic, it was muscle memory. Private Chen almost got hit by a passing bullet. Jessica reflexively pushed him to the ground, then identified and eliminated the sniper position. "Holy shit, Lieutenant," Chen was breathless. "How did you see that?" Jessica didn't answer. 3 years ago, in a similar situation in Kunar province, her partner had died like that. After a 2-hour firefight, the Taliban had retreated. Bravo team had taken no casualties. Moreover, they had eliminated 8 enemy fighters. When morning came, the base had quieted. When Jessica returned to the command post, all eyes were on her. But this time with a different look. Rodriguez sat across from her. "Lieutenant, that was exceptional tactical performance. Where did you learn those moves?" Jessica couldn't answer. It was classified information. Sergeant Davis approached her. His face now showed respect, not doubt. "Ma'am, I owe you an apology. And my life." Private Chen added, "We all do." From that day forward, everything changed for Jessica. They no longer called her princess, but lieutenant, with real respect. But for Jessica, the hardest part was maintaining her silence. Since she couldn't explain her past, she couldn't explain the reason for her success either. 3 months later, Jessica's base was transferred to another region. As she was leaving, Sergeant Davis gave her a small gift, a metal challenge coin. "Ma'am, this is from all of us, for the officer who proved that leadership isn't about what people know about you. It's about what you're willing to do when it matters." Jessica still carries that coin, and she still doesn't tell anyone about her past, because some heroes serve silently, not for recognition, but to do what's right. So I ask you, have you ever met someone like Jessica? Someone who was much more than they appeared but never said so? Write their name in the comments. Share their story. Because here at the Human Stories, we believe the most powerful stories don't shout, they wait. Thank you for watching. If this story moved you, subscribe, share, and help keep these voices alive. We'll see you in the next one. And until then, if you ever see a quiet officer managing real operations, watch their stance. You might be witnessing the greatest courage ever lived in history.